Hey, welcome to Barker's Bikes. In this video, we're going to be talking all about U-turns. So if you're still struggling with U-turns, you're not alone. We're going to cover every type of U-turn you can think of in this video, whether it's uphill, downhill, from a stop, on flat ground, you name it, we're talking about it. I'm going to cover the strategy that I use as a motor officer on a daily basis to perform these maneuvers. So if we haven't met, I'm Justin Barker. I'm a full-time motor officer and accident investigator. I have a love for motorcycles and a passion for helping the motorcycle community, and I want to see that you make it home safe on your next ride. That's what this is all about. So without further ado, let's get on this bike and let's get started making some U-turns. First, let's talk about how I do a U-turn from a stop. So if I need to do a U-turn on this road and I'm from a stop, well, I'm going to evaluate what's over here on my right. I'm going to look and see what's over on the left. I'm looking at the terrain. I'm looking at, is there anything in the road that could cause me issues? Is there any gravel? Is there any pine straw or anything like that that could cause me to slip? So after I've kind of taken into consideration the width of the road and the roadway condition, and I've decided to make the U-turn, I do it like this. So I just start the bike up, get the bike up and running. I'll put my left foot down, right foot up. I'm covering that rear brake, moving straight up from there to the throttle. This is a way you can remember it, going from your rear brake up to the throttle, so straight up. So next thing you do is you apply throttle. So I apply between 1,500 and 2,000 RPMs on the throttle, just like that. Next, moving over to the clutch. I'll slowly let the clutch lever out until I start entering the friction zone. This is a 2017 Harley. It's got a hydraulic clutch, small friction zone, and a lot of dead space. So there's that friction zone right there. So what I do is I enter the friction zone slightly. All right, you'll notice, you'll feel the bike starting to pull, and you'll also notice the RPMs drop a little bit. Compensate for that RPM drop, give it a little more RPMs. You want them to stay around that to 1,500. So 1,500-ish. All right, slowly letting out. The RPMs are starting to drop a little bit. So I know I'm ready when I let my foot off the rear brake and the motorcycle tries to move forward. All right, so I'm ready. I want to make sure it's got a good pull to it. So there it is. I can see it wanting to move forward. So from that point, keeping my friction zone the same, keeping my throttle the same, I turn the bars. I turn my head, and I slowly let my foot off that rear brake, and the bike will start moving. As soon as the bike starts moving, I just control it with the rear brake. I control the speed of the U-turn with the rear brake. So if I'm moving, I do kind of the same thing. So I'm creating some resistance with the rear brake. Once I do that, I'll start entering the friction zone slightly. And then now that I know that I've got that resistance, I can feel the bike kind of pulling, but I can feel that I'm holding it back slightly with that rear brake. I will turn my head, turn my bars, and make the maneuver. Any space that you give up over here, like if I try to do the U-turn from way over here and I don't get close to that curb, then I've just given up all that space, and that's going to push me that direction, and I'm going to be further towards that curb and be more likely in hitting it. So it's better to have the space and not need it on that side than it is to give it up for no reason on this side. So approaching, coming up, turn my head, turn the bars. I always stay within that friction zone, never come out of the friction zone. If you pull the clutch in while you're trying to make the maneuver, you're going to take the power away from the rear tire. That power, the power going to the rear tire is what makes the bike want to stand up. So that's why we always are working within the friction zone. As long as I don't come out of that friction zone, I have no fear of falling. So we've talked about from a stop. We've talked about while moving. So let's talk about U-turns on a hill. Let's get into that. Okay, you're going to be pleased to learn that a U-turn from a stop on a hill is just like a U-turn from a stop on flat ground. So if you let your foot off the rear brake and the bike doesn't move at all, it just holds itself in place, or if the bike barely moves forward, or even worse, the bike rolls backwards, you're not ready. The reason is you're not deep enough into the friction zone. You need to be a little further into that friction zone. So I like the bike to be pulling about twice as hard as gravity is pulling me backwards. So that's how I know I'm ready. It's going to look like this, and this may look familiar to you. All right, right foot up, left foot down, start the bike up. All right, notice, if I let my foot off the rear brake, I start rolling back. I am on a hill, and it is a little different. It's a little more intimidating than it is hard. It's really not as hard as you may think. Just follow my technique. All right, right foot up, left foot down. I'm on the rear brake. I move up to the throttle. I apply throttle up to about 1,500 RPMs, maybe 2,000. If you're on a really steep hill, go ahead and bump it up to 2,000, because once you start entering the friction zone, your RPMs are going to naturally come down a little bit, and you don't want those to come down too low, because you don't want to accidentally stall the bike in the maneuver. Stall the bike, you're going to have a gravity enhanced moment. So I'm going to moving straight up to the throttle hand. I'm going to get the RPMs up somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000. I'm going to slowly start letting the clutch lever out. Okay? Wait until I enter that friction zone. All right, I feel the bike starting to enter it. I see the RPMs dipping. See that as I start to enter the friction zone? So I'm going to compensate for that dip in RPMs by giving it just a little more RPM. So I feel the bike wanting to go. So I'm going to check to see if I'm ready. I'm going to let my foot off the rear brake. All right, see that? I want to be going, I want a little more pull than that. So I'm going to go a little further into the friction zone. All right, I'm letting my foot off the rear brake. Oh yeah, that's better. So now I turn my bars, I turn my head, and put that left foot up, look where you want to go, and commit to the turn. Just like that. I do that for a nice, smooth U-turn from a stop on a hill. What I'll do while I'm moving, I'm summing up the area. As I'm coming down through here, I'm going to pull my clutch lever in all the way, and I'm going to let it back out till I start entering that friction zone. When I feel the friction zone, when I feel it start to pull just a little bit, then I know I'm at the right place. I'm going to apply throttle, get my RPMs up like I would if I was stopped, get them up to around 1,500, 2,000 RPMs, and then I'm going to apply the rear brake slightly. So I'm already moving. I don't want to slow down too much, but I do want there to be some resistance. So I want the resistance to be from me pressing the rear brake, not from the gravity pulling me back on the hill. I'm in the friction zone enough that the bike's pulling enough that I'm the one causing the resistance. So once I get to that point, I turn my head, turn my bars, and commit to the turn. The key to this, make sure you're in the friction zone the entire time. If you pull the clutch lever in during the middle of the turn, you're going to have a gravity enhanced moment. So you don't want to do that, especially on a hill, because the bike is more likely to tip over and roll all the way up to the fairing. So if you touch the fairing to the ground, it's way more likely to cause damage. Most of the time they get chipped, they'll get these little spider webs in the clear coat. It's not pretty. Nobody wants to mess up their bike. You want to stay in that friction zone. That's what's keeping you up, all right? Anyway, with all that said, now I'm going to show you how I approach this and do this turn, okay? It happens so fast, that's why I had to stop to explain it to you. It happens so fast that it's a bit difficult for me to explain it as I'm moving, as I'm doing it. So let's check it out, let's do it. All right, here we go, have the seat. Approaching this, I've pulled it out of the friction zone. Now I've slowly entered the friction zone. I'll slightly apply my rear brake, turn my head, turn my bars, commit to the turn. In the friction zone, slightly apply the brake, turn my head, turn my bars, commit to the turn. Remember, the friction zone is your friend. Do not pull the clutch lever all the way in when you're trying to make this maneuver. You can pull it in slightly if you need the bike to dip more, but you do not want to pull it all the way back into the dead space, because if you take that power away, if you don't have any momentum and no power, you're going down. So that's just the way it works. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to do a U-turn from a stop going downhill. What we're going to do is a lot the same as we would do if we were going uphill. So left foot down, right foot up, got the foot on the rear brake, holding me in place. If I pull this clutch lever in, the bike's going to want to roll down the hill. So I'm holding it in place with the rear brake. So I'm going to need to enter the friction zone just as I would do if we were going uphill. I need that power going to the rear tire to make the bike want to stand up. So it's going to look like this. Left foot down, right foot up. I'm on that rear brake, moving up to the throttle hand. I apply throttle until I get 1,500 to 2,000 RPMs. Once I'm there, I slowly start releasing the clutch lever until I enter that friction zone. I feel the bike starting to pull. Yep, see that? The RPM start to dip. I know I'm getting close. So I need the bike to be pulling just a little bit. It doesn't have to be pulling as hard as it does when you're going uphill, but I do need a little bit of a pull. I need to know that the pull that I feel is not gravity, but the pull is actually the friction zone, because that's my stability. So here I am, 1,500, 2,000 RPM, slowly letting that clutch lever out until I start getting the friction zone. Feel the bike starting to pull. Once I feel the bike starting to pull, I turn my bars, turn my head, I let off the rear brake and commit to the turn. All right, so that's from a stop. So moving is kind of the same way as moving up the hill. As I'm coming down the hill, I'm applying the rear brake, slowing the bike down. I pull the clutch lever in, let the clutch lever back out to the friction zone. When I know that the friction zone is there, that's my safety net, that's my security. I know that I'm able to make the U-turn without tipping over. All right, so I'm approaching this downhill section. I'm on the rear brake. I'm entering the friction zone slightly. Got the RPMs at a steady pace. I feel it trying to pull. Turn my head, turn my bars, and commit. All right, so one thing I'm not doing, I'm not looking at that curve. I'm looking back in the direction I want to go. I'm up on the seat. I've got my good posture, and I'm upright, in control. All the normal slow riding stuff, you're going to do those things before you get ready to make the U-turn. All right, so we'll do the one everybody hates the most first. It's uphill from a stop U-turn. So left foot down, right foot up. I'm on the rear brake. I'm holding it pretty steady because if I don't press pretty hard, the bike's going to roll backwards. Moving up to the throttle, I get that throttle up to about 2,000 RPMs because we're on a steep hill. I slowly start letting the clutch lever out, entering the friction zone. So once I enter the friction zone, the RPMs are going to drop, but I'm going to hold it there, compensate for that RPM droppage by giving a little more throttle. You don't want them under 1,500 on a steep hill like this. You don't want to stall. All right? So 2,000, slowly let the clutch out, I'm dropping down to about 1,500. I'm seeing, now I'm going to let my foot off the brake. All right, see that? That's not enough. Like, I need to, when I let my foot off the rear brake, I need to be deep enough into this friction zone that the motorcycle starts moving forward at a pretty hard rate. Like, I want it to pull forward twice as hard as it's pulling, the gravity's pulling me backwards. So let's try that again. So RPM's up. Slowly let the clutch lever out to the friction zone. So, yeah, it's dropping down. All right, I'm gonna let them check it. A little more. All right, now the bike's starting to pull pretty hard. I'm gonna turn my bar, turn my head. So this time I'm going to show you how to do it without ever stopping on the hill. So I'm going to continuously tune. So I'll be slowing down, kind of entering that friction zone, drag the rear brake just a little bit, turn my head, turn my bar, commit to the turn. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to Heart of Dixie Harley-Davidson in Birmingham, Alabama for providing this beautiful 2017 Ultra Limited. If you're in the market, be sure to check them out. If you got value from this video, be sure to give me a like, and I will see you on the next one. Let's continue to become safer, more confident riders together. Thanks, guys.